Today we're going to finish up chapter 5. And where we last left off, we had the Boston Tea Party, which wasn't really a tea party like the massacre really wasn't a massacre, but the colonists dumped 90,000 plus pounds of tea into the Boston harbor, and they got punished by the British, and all the colonies decided it was time to come together and unite. So they set up a Continental Congress, and a Continental Congress is all the colonies got together and had a meeting, basically. And 12 of the 13 colonies showed up. The only one that didn't send a representative was Georgia. Um, but at the meeting of the Congress, they urged each colony to form a militia. Now, a militia is a small army of people, and what the militia does is they have to be ready to fight in case they're being attacked or it's needed before the army can get there. Although they didn't really have an army at the time either, but this is like just a small army of citizens. And in Boston, the militia were called the Minutemen. And they were called the Minutemen because they were ready to fight in a minute's notice. So this led to a major event. And I'm going to tell you the story of Lexington and Concord. And what happened was the colonists, they stored their weapons in a town called Concord. And when we say arms, we mean their weapons. But they stored them in Concord. And the British learned of this, and they planned to attack Concord. Because, if they take all their weapons, then they can't fight, so they're not going to have any actual fighting. And, tensions were getting high, or it looked like something was going to happen, and Britain kept sending more and more troops to the colonies, especially the Boston area. So in April 18th, 1775, the British troops traveled to Concord, and this is where you hear the story of Paul Revere and his famous ride. Now, the truth is in that story, and I want you to put two names in here. I want you to type two names in. I don't care if you spell it right. I just want you to put two names in below Paul Revere made his famous ride. I want you to write William Dawes. Dawes is Dawes. And then Samuel Prescott. Prescott. And William Dawes and Samuel Prescott. And what they were is they made the same ride as Revere. They went to other places. They all three kind of spread out and made a ride telling people that the British troops were going to Concord and that they were coming and they were going to go and try to take the weapons or do whatever they were going to do. And, there's a poem about it. There's one if by land, two if by sea, which supposedly if they hang one lantern, then it means they're going to come by land. If they hang two, they're going to come by sea. That there was two lanterns up, but they'd been up for a couple of days. And in real life, that was just part of the poem. And like I said, Paul Revere is the main person that gets credit for doing this, but he and Dawes and Prescott all really did the same thing. The reason Revere was used in the poem, and we know so much more about him, is because it was easier to rhyme with Revere than it was Dawes and Prescott. So, but they made their famous ride and alerted the town that the British troops, the British regulars, were coming. So when they're on their way, 70 Minutemen stopped 700 British troops outside of Concord in a small town called Lexington. And they stopped them, and they're like, "Hey, you can't come through here." And they're like, "There's 700 of us, dude. Let us through." And they're like, "Well, okay, we can't really stop you." And they began to retreat. And as they were retreating, a shot was fired. And they don't know who shot it. They don't know if it was a colonist. They don't know if it was a British troop. And this shot was known as the shot heard round the world, because it was the first shot of the Revolutionary War. Fighting broke out. 8 colonists were killed. The British kept marching. They went to Concord. They got to the place where they were storing their weapons. They opened up the doors and they found absolutely nothing. Nothing was there. They knew they were coming. They moved them. They moved them somewhere else. So the British were like, oh, dang it, we got to go back. So they turned around to march back. And on their march back, they were attacked by 300 Minutemen waiting for them. Not waiting for them in the middle of the road, hiding behind trees and bushes, wherever they could hide in ditches, and just fired them off and killed many, many, many British soldiers. At that point, war was inevitable. And inevitable means it's going to happen, and there's really nothing you can do to stop it. Because we just tricked the British soldiers into thinking they're going to get our weapons, and then when they were coming back, we killed many British soldiers. And that's the end of chapter 5. Chapter 6 is the Revolutionary War, or the American Revolution. Spoiler right there. There's your spoiler right there. Hey, I went to Boston in 2013, and I told the class this a little bit, I'm sure already, but I was on a walking tour, and I didn't get to see as much as I'd like to because the friend I went with was having some issues, and well, we had a 3-hour walking tour, and we only made it through about half of it. But off there in the distance, right in the middle of the screen, right here, this is the Old North Church. Okay, so that's where they hung the lanterns, the Old North Church. This is the Boston. This is like where they had a lot of meetings, a lot of important meetings. That structure was there in the 1700s. A reading of the Declaration of Independence, I believe, one of the first readings took place at that building. This is just a picture of the Boston Harbor, the Boston Tea Party, and this is a statue of Thomas, the guy from Connecticut who had, Connecticut started in Massachusetts before it expanded and all that. But we talked about that earlier, so I just thought I'd throw it in there with my Boston pictures. That is Thomas and from Connecticut. You should know his last name. So, hey guys, that's the end of chapter 5. We are ready to fight for our independence, and we'll pick up the story there at a later date.